Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first LinkedIn Live. We're very excited to be doing this today. I'm sorry you've actually got me today. So John Quinlan, our Head of Business Development, is not with us. So you've got me, Zoe Kennedy, Communication Lead at Lawler Consulting and Lola Sustainability. But we've got some a great attendance today. So we have from our side, Lawler Consulting, we have our Technical Director, Jason Smith, and also one of our young and upcoming engineers, Grace Roche, and also a special guest today, Ian Fewer, who is a partner at Fewer Harrington Partners, who are a multidisciplinary architectural practice. Obviously, both of us, we Lawler Consulting and FHP, we work internationally. So yes, we're based in Ireland, but we're working in the UK, Saudi Arabia, and in Europe. So we're very well placed, and we're very excited today because retail is a huge sector for both our companies. And obviously, we're seeing a lot of changes pre and post COVID, and we really want to get into what we're seeing in particular, give you some of our insights and findings and learnings, and also give you some predictions for what we think is going to happen going forward. So without further ado, I just want to jump in, and by all means, guys, if whoever's watching, if you want, this is your chance to basically engage with us and ask your questions. So if there's anything that you want to hear from our experts today, just drop it in the chat box, or if you prefer, you can private message me, Zoe Kennedy on LinkedIn. We are managing that, so we can take those questions and answer them at the end for you. So yeah, if without further ado, then, if I want to kick off first and go straight to, let's start with Ian first, and just ask Ian. So what are you seeing in the retail sector at the minute? Well, pre-COVID, and I guess post-COVID. Hopefully, we're on the other side now, so I can say post-COVID.
Yeah, look, I think we're obviously seeing a lot of stores looking at our clients looking at kind of refurbishing their stores to get customers back in at the moment. There is a kind of a transition trying to push everybody onto their digital platforms, and getting customers familiar with that as well. So there's a big push on in terms of having to kind of transverse when people go into the store, trying to push them onto their online platforms as well. So it's as I said to you, we do see retail picking up quite rapidly again, because people want that experience of going into town centres, into shopping centres, and experiencing that retail therapy. So yeah, look, it's looking kind of quite positive at the moment. And in terms of new build units, we have a number of clients that are aggressively expanding again.
Great. Okay. And Jason, what is Lola seeing at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think I start with what we were seeing pre-COVID was major changes in terms of retail clients looking at their corporate and social responsibility, all the way through their supply chain, through how they operated their buildings to make them energy efficient, more energy efficient lighting. We were involved in a huge number of energy efficiency projects. We saw a major impact in terms of the rate at which new projects were happening over COVID. So despite them being essential projects, a lot of clients had to stop their development plans in terms of new construction. And we are now opening up into a situation, as we are constructing and finishing retail projects, that there is extreme pressure in the construction industry in terms of being able to deliver. And then what we're seeing in terms of how the buildings operate is we're seeing a significant amount of concern coming back from our clients in terms of ventilation systems, in terms of air quality. So we've clients that are looking at retail spaces and their cafes within retail spaces, for example. They want to look at air quality monitoring. basically you want to make sure that they are alleviating the concern that both staff and customers have in terms of the new environment. And then I think what is really important is, clients are starting to think about their resilience. If you have another viral outbreak, if you have no control from a HR point of view in terms of how you schedule staff, how you operate as a retailer, that potentially you can have a whole function within your retail store suddenly can no longer function because you have everybody in the warehouse is off with a COVID outbreak, or everybody on the shop floor, or everybody at the management level. So that is changing the way they are actually conducting day-to-day business and how they schedule staff. And I think I think just going back to air quality, so many clients now are asking us, how do we make sure we have more air changes through the building, and we're seeing that the scales, if you like, where we always had a balance between energy consumption and good ventilation rates. We're seeing that shift towards ventilation is becoming much more important than energy. So that's having an impact on how we design buildings.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, obviously the high street has been devastated. Obviously, since COVID, we've seen fashion retail shrinking, but then obviously other parts of retail booming. Food retail specifically, and it's very much like the whole climate change. There's reports every day on that, and it's the same with COVID. The changes, are not they're not comprehensible, and I think it's important that as consultants in the industry that we are planning for these changes, and we're actually consulting and advising our clients, because some of these changes have really big implications for business. So some of the things that we're also seeing is obviously as Ian just mentioned there, it's the change on the high street, and obviously shops shrinking, and he mentioned there about the use of planning in terms of retail stores actually or retail landlord owners moving away from retail into the food and beverage sector. So Ian, what in terms of those changes that you're seeing there, what kind of work are you getting involved in at the moment?
Yeah, look, we're involved in a number of change of use applications in various locations in the southeast of Ireland at the moment, and it's where you've got existing landlords of kind of larger kind of retail kind of shopping malls or so on. And there's a greater demand for, and even in city centre locations, a greater demand for, I suppose, F&B than retail at the moment, because retail has been hit so hard. And I think, which was probably always coming in a certain degree, because I think a lot of our towns and cities were overly kind of concentrated with retail and didn't have a strong enough balance with food and beverage. So it's kind of balancing out, but like where I suppose city centre locations are kind of maybe struggling from a retail perspective, you've got the out of town centres, which are have been less affected, and the likes of the retail warehousing parks in various different locations, and they've been they're looking for new, a lot of these, like the Harvey Normans, the PC Worlds, the home builders, they're all looking at kind of expanding their operations, and we're involved with a number of kind of home builders as well, stores, in terms of expanding their operations. So it will sway, but talking to kind of I suppose landlords, is they do see in time that retail will re-engage within the town centres again, and it'll be a slower pickup. But definitely, there's no doubt about it. COVID has changed people and their spending power and how they spend their money and what they spend their money on. And what we do see, hopefully, in the future is that you might have a series of smaller units rather than taking larger units. And so a retail store might be more like a showroom facility where you try to close on and then they'll deliver it to your house the next day, and that's what we're hearing in the industry. That also, by not having as much stock in the store, they can reduce the amount of square footage they're paying for. So, and it's all about driving customers onto their online platform. So, it has changed, and it's just kind of changed to, I think, more a balance between retail and F&B rather than just pure retail in the town centres and around Ireland, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose we don't really know what the what COVID has done to the economy yet. I mean, we can second guess, obviously, but I mean, but obviously retailers are now looking, to save money. That's the top and bottom of it, and reduce their costs. So obviously, stuff like energy cost and operating costs and the maintenance costs of the buildings all come into play. And I suppose certainly on our side, Jason, you probably would agree that is a massive part of what we're doing as well, in terms of building energy ratings.
Absolutely. I think there will continue to be a drive for the corporate social responsibility. I think there is a huge connection between health and well-being and corporate social responsibility. I think one of the things I'd like to ask Ian, just in terms of, I can remember master planning projects that we were looking at, Ian, where from a retail perspective, we were much more looking at the change from a master planning perspective to retail centres becoming a destination. And,
yes.
And I think this so as a destination, your shops are more like a marketplace. You've food venues, you've music venues, you've things to attract people. Do you see? I mean, that's something in terms of projects that we were interacting on pre-COVID. Have you seen that develop further? Have you seen the drive of COVID actually make that need for a destination as a development much more important?
Exactly. Yeah. No, we're definitely seeing that. And look, every city, town in Ireland is trying to kind of maybe reinvent their town centre after post-COVID, and they're trying to, they have space in their town centre, and they're trying to say, how do we fill this space? And look, we're looking at a number of kind of farmers, kind of market, kind of English market kind of setups where it's encouraging small SME businesses to set up cost effectively, like so. In my home city in Waterford, like the council has been kind of proactive in terms of creating kind of some infill sites and allowing kind of small SME businesses to put in kind of more kind of F&B kind of stalls, and that could expand into more kind of retail. But it's trying to get, I suppose, these businesses, these medium to small businesses up and running, because they do take up a lot of our high street space, and they maybe haven't had they didn't have the online kind of presence there. So it's getting those businesses, and supporting those businesses, the various different councils around Ireland. And I think many of the councils are trying to do as much as what they can in terms of getting that vibrancy back in their city centre. And I think that'll be crucial, because you have to create an experience for people to go into your city centre and start spending the money, whether it's on food or whether it's on retail and other purchases. So we are seeing that across Ireland, and in the UK as well. I believe a lot of councils are in the same kind of boat, where they have to repurpose maybe old shopping centres, and how they repurpose them in the city centre, and to make their city centres vibrant and a vibrant place to be, where people want to spend time.
Yeah, very good. I suppose, yeah. So just going back on the building energy ratings, and obviously there's a huge desire for our clients, obviously now, to look at carbon reduction and cost savings, and that's kind of branching into kind of more sustainability consultancy as part of, I guess, from the Lawler Consulting side, our traditional M&E offering. So I guess, yeah, what kind of things are we seeing on that side? I mean, you mentioned there, Jason, about the wider CSR strategy, but how is it all plugging together?
Yeah, so we would have seen a very consistent uptake and growth in terms of the percentage of projects that have sustainability credentials over a number of years, really going from a very, very low baseline. Probably 10 years ago, where I kind of looked at the amount of sustainability credentials in the retail sector was very small. We now have pretty much every client that we are working with is doing something from a credentialing point of view in terms of their sustainability. But we're also seeing a greater interest in some of the credentials around the healthy buildings. So fit well, and more recently, also have a health and safety certification system associated. So a lot of these things are emerging associated with viral waste. I think it's probably a good opportunity for Grace to introduce what she did at college. She's one of the top students that came out of her course in Waterford, and and what she did was she looked at all of the different credentialing systems from a well-being point of view, to actually put some tools together to help clients in terms of decision making. So, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for my final year project, I completed my research. It was basically a comparison of the third-party certification systems which are available today. Some of these systems are very prominent in the retail sector in Ireland. So I compared BREEAM, WELL, FitWell, and LEED. So they're kind of the top third-party building certification systems in Ireland at the moment. And just some of the main findings of my research was the benefits of these systems to retailers today. So we looked at how retailers can benefit from lower operating costs, lower emissions, lower carbon taxes, and then obviously like a lower carbon footprint. Also, another benefit was to like retail store owners. So due to like increased market value of the building, they can avail of higher rents from tenants, and then obviously like lower tenancy turnovers is another outcome of that. Another main benefit that Jason touched on there was increased health and well-being of occupants of the buildings due to these third-party certification systems. So retailers would benefit from lower rates of employee absenteeism, and then obviously lower sick payouts and higher productivity rates as a result of increased health and well-being of the occupants.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose there, just to kind of emphasize, a lot of these kind of changes that we're seeing now in sustainability, and they're definitely becoming more prominent, is the fact that all these sustainability rating systems are kind of being pushed at investor level. So, as companies, we need to be, being seen as green. And if you're not, and this is not part of your, sustainability strategy or agenda, then you're not going to get the funding from investors. So there is an incentive there driving this forward. So just in terms of, Jason, you mentioned there about obviously some of these sustainability rating systems kind of providing resilience to retail businesses. So obviously, And I suppose that plugs into Ian's side as well in terms of architectural planning in terms of COVID. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, how does some of these rating systems actually help with resilience to businesses?
Okay, well, I suppose I've taken a lead on one of those systems myself, which is the Reset, which was a standard that came from Asia, very much developed in the kind of Asian kind of environmental crisis around in terms of environmental pollution around kind of 2010 2011, where in various areas of Asia there were a lot of deaths associated with air quality issues, primarily from a manufacturing point of view. But there's been a huge interest in in air quality and the data. I suppose the data quality of information. So Reset set up a standard which is very much focused around the quality of information, the reassurance to people that if you have a CO2 sensor or a carbon monoxide sensor, an air quality sensor which is measuring a number of parameters, that the data is very accurate, that it actually reflects the air quality, it reflects the actual ventilation rates in the space, and it gives notifications to people. So we've seen that is really taken off in the office sector. Again, really important in terms of the added value. If you're renting or if you're renting office space, that people can be assured about the environmental quality. And I think that is going to feed into the retail sector as well, because for all organisations, whether you're an office, whether you're retail, your resilience is from a viral outbreak point of view is down to making sure you absolutely minimise the risk of a large proportion of absenteeism, which effectively overnight can mean that you're shutting the doors to your business. So I think that's that's really important. So we're seeing a lot of clients actually saying things like cafe spaces, office spaces. Can we look at air quality? Can we look at demand-based ventilation? When when there are people in a space, the ventilation ramps up to the maximum. We've had clients look at things like the air quality sensors automatically opening up their automated doors to actually get a throughput of air, to get some natural ventilation through their building. So a lot of people are kind of saying, energy is important, but it's not as important as the viral risk that we've faced over the last 18 months. So we are definitely seeing that balance of we need to look at giving people assurance. So Reset is a great example of that. That air quality feeds into a number of other standards. So Well and Fitwell are standards that are all about the safety in terms of air quality, water quality, etc. within an environment, and so they are becoming much more popular in terms of just people see a plaque outside the door or as they walk in the door. It gives them the assurance in terms of that this building is managed well, it's designed and managed well to make sure that we actually do have a safe environment. And I think that's going to continue to increase in the same way that we've seen retailers, we've seen restaurants are actually demonstrating how they are a safer environment by actually putting plaques and standards outside of their building that demonstrate different health and safety quality standards. So I think that will continue as long as we have a significant concern in terms of viral risk.
Yeah, and I suppose that just kind of feeds in nicely as well into the question that's coming. I don't know if that's live on the chat or whether that's coming outside of this. But Steve, working in retail, he says, in your opinion, do certifications such as Well and Fitwell stack up commercially? I suppose that kind of goes into a little bit more of the benefits of these standards in terms of risk and resilience and managing that.
Yeah, I think personally, I think the balance has changed. I mean, you've always been able to look at total operating costs of a business, look at the energy costs in retail, and make a very persuasive argument that reduce your energy consumption and you improve the bottom line. I think in terms of resilience and risk associated with air quality, if you don't get it right, it's going to be much worse than a slight dent in the bottom line. It is going to be, do you have a sustainable business in terms of the impact of of being able to continue to trade, other than the changes to online. I think I think there is still a very, very persuasive argument that you need to look after the staff. You need to, obviously it's a slightly different relationship with customers that are more transient in retail, but you just the same as any other business. If you do not have the resilience of being able to provide a service by having the staff at hand, that is going to have a serious impact on your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's not just staff. I suppose it's actually the people visiting the retail outlets as well. And maybe Ian can comment on this. Obviously, what are you seeing in terms of, like, as an architect, in terms of space planning, the circulation, the movement of people? How are you seeing that play out?
Yeah, look, in I suppose a lot of the stores, the retail outlet kind of customers that we have, it hasn't changed dramatically in terms of labor because they have a lot of space and they're kind of properly kind of spaced out. And where you're dealing with smaller stores in town centre locations, yeah, look, they'd have to look at that a lot more carefully in terms of how they manage the amount of people in their stores and controlling kind of access at the door and so on. But they haven't kind of dramatically, in our view, and what we've seen is altered the way they lay out the stores and so on. They've just had to put in extra managerial processes to manage the flow of people through their stores and making sure that they're in compliance with the regulations that are there. So it's, as I said to you, it's more what we're seeing is how some retailers that we're dealing with are looking to really, I said, it's the kind of this growth of this kind of food and beverage side to look at if they had space, can they put in some food and beverage into it to kind of balance it out, because they see that that's a kind of a draw to get people into the store if they have the space within the store, and to hold people there. And we're seeing one kind of retailer who is looking to start up a new kind of coffee shop kind of brand, which is going to be associated with all their stores at the moment. So they have to think differently because, as I said, the world has changed. A lot of people, before they go out and buy something these days, is they go online, they look for the best deals, so it's more online focused. And when you get them into the store, you need to give them more. They're looking for more, and that experience as well. So as I said, look, I think it's what we'll see is probably smaller stores in the future in terms of footprints, and as I said, a lot more kind of touchscreen kind of devices in the stores to drive people onto their online platforms for the kind of the medium to larger kind of retailers. And then for the smaller retailers, it's about providing a great environment in terms of a shop fit environment to hold customers in the store and to get them buying again.
Yeah, so I suppose what we're saying is, to summarise, is having the processes in place, to be able to control staff and schedule the planning of staff, if you like, is going to obviously save time and cost to the business, to the business's bottom line. So I assume improved air quality, like we say, is going to give people confidence to come back to work and know that they're working in a secure environment. Yeah. There is. I've just got another question here. This is Anita, and she's an architect, and she's saying, is Reset actually classed as a sustainability rating system, or is it just a building management tool for air quality?
I think it would be more classed as a data quality standard, believe it or not, because Reset was very much set up in an environment where we'd all look at air quality devices. You can get your consumer-based device that basically tells you the air quality is good plus or minus 50%. It's not really good enough to make a decision as to demand-based ventilation. So we made the investment ourselves of putting the Reset sensors in our own office, and we are just going through the process of certification. So we felt it was important to demonstrate ourselves in terms of, I suppose, how we value our own staff and how we, I suppose, to us the risk in terms of resilience to our own business is important. The quality of information that you get is such that surprisingly, when you look at the information, if somebody actually takes some gel with alcohol in it, they rub their hands, you can actually detect the increase in volatile organic compounds on the sensors. I can actually see it online, literally. So it is a really high quality standard. The certification is around maintaining consistency of data during the occupied period, the quality of data, the quality of the meters that you're using. So it's not a consumer-based product that you can buy for for 30, 40 euros per sensor. Typically, you've sensor installation somewhere in the range of 600 to 1,000 euro, depending on the scale, covering maybe 200 square meters per sensor in an open plan space. But it's very much a data quality standard, and we would all be much more assured knowing that the quality of information is plus or minus a couple of percent rather than plus or minus 25% or 50%. So I think that's the important distinction between the certification system.
Yeah, okay. And there's actually, I'm going to ask you this whilst we're on this theme, but there's a question here from Fergal, and it says, I think we need to update our building systems across our stores, looking at ventilation in particular. What's the best way to do this?
Yeah, I think very much, there is, as consulting engineers on the consulting side, we've got guidance from SIBSI, ASHRAE, and a few other standards where this basically gives us a starting point in terms of coming in, surveying an environment, whether it's a store, whether it's an office or whatever, and looking at, there's a process to look at, can we simply increase ventilation rates and make them demand-based control? If we're not able to do that, can we put in additional filtration within the system? So you will see a lot more reference now to UVGI, ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, which is basically UV lamps in your airstream that sterilize the air, combined with HEPA filters, high efficiency particulate acceptance filters, and activated carbon filters. So there could be a significant investment in terms of that additional equipment to improve air quality if you have to have if you have to improve your filtration systems because it's a large building with lots of recirculated air. In small buildings, demand-based ventilation where you can keep it full fresh air, possibly with heat recovery systems, and push more air through the building is a more appropriate solution. So we're actually, we've actually made it part of our quality assurance to assess designs before they actually go out on projects to look at what we should be doing as best practice, based on typically ASHRAE and CIBSE guidance.
Brilliant. Okay, and I think this one's for Ian. So Gary, retail landlord, says, Ian mentioned you are seeing lots of planning apps for change of use. What is the planning process for change of use?
For a change of use application, it's the same process in terms of timelines as a normal application. So in Ireland, it's once you make the application, there's an 8-week process that the local authority have to process that application. So obviously there's a different in terms of how you calculate the fee into the planning application for the local authority. Obviously it's slightly reduced if you're doing kind of a new build building. So, but it's a straightforward process. And it's needed if, say, for instance, you had a retail store and suddenly now you want to convert it into a coffee shop. You'll need a change of use application, or if you want to put it into a restaurant or office space, you need to go through a change of use application process with the relevant local authority.
Yeah, I mean, you said 8 weeks there, Ian. I mean, is it being delayed because of the COVID situation, or is it the standard 8 weeks?
No. The 8 weeks is a standard statutory time period that the local authority can't take longer than that. Obviously, look, after the 8 weeks, the local authority usually asks for further information requests, right? Which you have to provide them with more information, and then they'll respond then thereafter in another 4 weeks after you submit that information. So, as I said to you, but what we're seeing is local authorities, seeing the need for businesses to adapt quickly, is that once there's nothing controversial about this change of use application, we've done a number of them where they've given them straight granted permission on those change of use applications.
Yeah, and just another question from Gary on this. He says, ideally, when would you bring an M&E consultant into a project? Would that be pre or post planning?
From our perspective, it's normally post planning. We would normally bring in the mechanical electrical designer like Jason's team. But it really depends on the size of the complexity of the job. If it's quite a large kind of retrofit job, we would see them getting in a lot sooner than that at the planning process, because we have to make sure that we have allocated the right plant equipment on the roof and made sure that that's within our planning documents. So we're not going in for further planning to get a plant facility on the roof, or a substation at the back, or various mechanical kind of components that we haven't thought of. So on smaller projects, more so post planning, but on larger retail or commercial projects, we would get them in at the early design stage, pre-planning.
I'd just like to add in there, Ian. I mean, you're perfectly right, and I suppose on those more complex projects, once it's defined as a major refurb from a building regulations point of view, we've seen major changes to the energy part of the building regs, Part L, and for major refurbs, the requirements are quite onerous. They're obviously significantly more onerous for new builds, which have to meet an NZEB standard or near zero energy buildings. But because of that, the earlier we can actually work with the architect, the better. I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for Ian to phone me and ask me for a little bit of advice very early on in the project. Are we going the right direction? And we're always keen to to help at the earliest stage. The last thing we want to do is is being introduced at the stage where we're actually saying there are issues that need to be resolved from part of our compliance point of view.
Yeah, well, like, and to follow up on that, like, we'd always recommend to our clients, it's always beneficial to have the right professionals around you from the get-go, so they can advise you. And basically, our jobs is to I suppose, find ways that we can make whatever development or fit out more cost-effective, and that our clients are getting value for money, really.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Actually, there's a question here. It is a little bit controversial, and I think we probably answered it in some degree. It says, "What?" This is Graham, who says he's a retailer. He says, "What are the benefits of our retail businesses to consider health and well-being? Sounds like a lot more expense for very little return." Maybe a better question is, what are the implications for not considering health and well-being? I don't know if you want to just answer that, Jason.
Yeah, I suppose it is resilience for your business. I mean, we saw during COVID. I mean, so you're slightly off track in terms of retail, but a great example of businesses that were massively affected was the meat industry, and that was because the impact in terms of if they didn't have the resilience in the event of somebody getting COVID, there was too much close contact with people. It spread very, very quickly. I think we've seen a different outcomes with different variants of COVID. Some of the newer variants have spread more quickly. So I think to me it's clients are asking for advice. It is very much about resilience. But if we can, if we're involved at a stage, we can join a few dots together. Sometimes the synergy between looking at reducing the risk in terms of viral infection, and looking at the balance from an energy point of view. Sometimes we can find a good synergy where you can achieve both. What you don't want to do is end up in a situation you basically open all of the windows and doors and skylights in the middle of winter, and you still have to try and heat the stove. So it's important, I think, wherever you are in that, I suppose in terms of the effect on your bottom line, the effect in terms of resilience, to make sure that it's being considered on balance. Is the energy cost more important? Is the resilience in terms of an outbreak more important to your business bottom line? And is there a sensible compromise? We won't say to a client, invest in additional filtration and additional plants when it's not necessary. What we will try and do as engineers is find the best compromise, particularly using active controls where we pre-ventilate a building before occupancy, and we control the rates of ventilation based on what is actually required. It's actually much worse from an energy perspective if we just dramatically increase ventilation rates consistently without actually looking at occupancy.
Yeah, but I think on kind of health and well-being and certification around health and well-being, I think it'll be certain companies and retailers and will see a value in it, right? And they'll see a value because of their staff, and they want to attract more staff, and then you'll have other companies who won't see a value in it. And I think it's into that individual company or retailer, to decide to say, look, is this of value? And some people will agree in saying, well, I don't feel it's a value in our business, and other clients will go, well, actually, I can see value in it, because it may give me a better kind of level of staff, in terms of trying to get staff back into work and finding staff. And it may be in a particular situation where there's a lot more kind of closer contact with customers, and it may help them ease their kind of maybe some anxieties about I suppose going back into stores. So I think it's really down to the individual companies and retailers, and they'll choose whether it gives them the return, or is it expensive, is it good value.
Yeah, I feel that summarizes everything perfectly. I can't see any more questions coming through on the chat, but just for the people that are listening, and obviously to the retail sector, if not to put you on the spot, by the way, guys, but if you were to give them one takeaway, going forward in a post-COVID world, what would you say?
Jason, you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay. I suppose the takeaway from this to me, I would say ask for professional advice in terms of how do I get the balance between a safer, healthier environment and my bottom line. I mean, in the retail industry, it's tight margins. Your energy costs are significant, so you have to get a balance. And I would say, that initial professional advice to assess the best way forward is money very well spent.
Exactly, yeah, and I'd agree. I suppose it's getting the right kind of professionals around you if you're considering a kind of a different approach in terms of what you're going to do with your business. From a retail perspective, are you using all the space that you have within your stores, or within one store or many stores, to the maximum? Is there ways to, and not to say, to sublet some areas, or and create extra revenue coming in that can actually benefit your business, i.e., like what we're seeing with some of our clients is that they have a large store and they're actually going to subdivide a small space where they're going to get maybe a small coffee shop in there that will help drive footfall into their main store. We're seeing a number of clients doing that. So I think engaging professional consultants like ourselves and Jason, I think will kind of stimulate ideas. And I suppose what we're here to bring value to any of our clients, and think outside the box in terms of how to, I suppose, deal with generating more revenue with maybe the same amount of floor area, and being more efficient in terms of how you do so.
Brilliant. Okay, guys. Well, I really appreciate your time today, both of you. I think it's been an excellent first LinkedIn Live, and hopefully there'll be many more to come. So we really appreciate the engagement today. We've had some great questions there, and if there's anything that you would like to, engage with us, further engage with us on, or ask a question, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat, in the comments box, or ask one of our guys, Jason, Grace, and obviously Ian. So thank you, everybody, and we'll hopefully see you next time. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.